I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby, here with Olivier Bériot, the costume designer behind the Apple TV Plus limited series Franklin. And Olivier, you're doing this series, which is set in Paris. It's late 18th century. I have to imagine that for a costume designer, this kind of like opportunity, you get this kind of opportunity, and it's just like, let me get my hands on it. Was there that kind of excitement for you when you first took this job?
Yes, totally. So when they contact me, it was a race between three costume designers, and they contact us because we were a French costume designer living in France. And they call us because they think maybe in a way, I think production-wise first, but also we French, and we can explain more how Franklin created theater of himself coming to the court of Versailles, on trying with the costume to explain what's happened between Franklin and the government, and the way he waited 3 years to have an interview with the king. Ruiz was a very young king. And well, I really enjoyed doing the job because you never had the opportunity to do a so big piece in Paris, because everything was shot in Paris and in castle around Paris, which made my work extremely comfortable, as you can imagine.
Well, and so how much about this period did you know in advance, and how much research did you have to do to become familiar with it?
Okay, so I knew the period. I've done other projects of this period, many ballet things. I've done a movie, but 20 years ago, about the story of Louis XIV, so the two king before. But this period, this specific period, on this specific show, it's only a real person that we have in the show. So I go more deep in the story of each character, because it's a lot of main character, could be super boring for the audience. So when we go more deep in each character, in who's Bancroft, who's Wentworth, who's Vergennes, the foreign minister, I discover many things of each story of each character, and that helped me to create the character differently. Vergennes, for example, it was extremely important in the show because it's the foreign minister. It's the first one, when he realized that Franklin was in Paris, that it's probably extremely important for the king to meet him. And it's Vergennes who organized this waiting time of 3 years to introduce Franklin to the king. But Vergennes, why Vergennes was so open-minded is because when he started, he's from a noble family, and he became a French ambassador. He was 20 years old in Portugal. Then he moved to Germany. Then he moved to Sweden. Then he go to Istanbul, where he lived 15 years. And he come back to Versailles. He's 50 years old. He met his wife that we see in the show. He met his wife in Istanbul. It's a French woman from Istanbul. It's why she wore this traditional kaftan at the beginning of the show. And we see this woman. He was extremely shy, and he never bring his wife to the courts, because she came from Istanbul, and in Istanbul, the French people should wear traditional costume if they go in the street. So like that, I discover Vergennes suddenly super interesting, super deep. It's why I use these cotton prints for his home robe when we see him having breakfast. And there's this valet who helped him, that probably bring back from Istanbul, because when he started the show, he just come back from Istanbul. So it's why he was so aware what's the world, who are the other country. Voilà. And all the characters like that. Madame Brion, the love affair of Franklin, for example, she was the wife of the finance ministry of Louis XVI, and we know that she was an extremely talented harpsichord player, and many big composer, when they have the opportunity to go to Paris, they go to meet her and ask her to play harpsichord for new pieces they wrote. And we know too that she was a very friend of Fragonard, and a very friend of Duplessis, two major painter of the 18th century in Paris. And she brings Franklin to the workshop of Duplessis. She brings Franklin to the workshop on Fragonard. We have a drawing from Fragonard of the face of Franklin, made in Paris. We have the painting of Franklin when he was in Paris, and this is this painting that inspired the engraved face of Franklin that you have on the $100 bill. So each character was so deep, so fun to work on, to make the research on them. Then the inspiration come very quickly.
Well, and you also get to, I think, one of the great things about this series is, at least from a design standpoint, is that you're not just focusing on like the French characters, you also have the British characters, and you have these iconic American characters like John Adams. And so how was that like equally exciting to go outside of France to these iconic American characters and British characters?
Totally. So to explain you the work, if you want, at the beginning, I treat them like sports teams, you know, like that the spectator could recognize which nationality are on screen. Yeah. Bon, alors it's still subtle, but I have fun with a particular cultural design trait. For example, for Wentworth, I cut a coat in a British spirit, but with detail of a Macintosh. If you wanna, I match Burberry, Portsmouth on 18th century design, something like that. And then I do the same for all the American outfits. I do a sort of cross between Calvin Klein, minimalism, Ralph Lauren, earthiness, on opposite to the French wardrobe with the chic of Dior, of Chanel. I always try to mix a reference of today to help the audience to have a sensibility of the character that remind them something of today. But I really treat them like three sport teams, and I enjoy to do it.
I love that. I love that analogy because so much of what this series is about is strategy and each side trying to play the other side. So it's almost a perfect analogy.
Totally. And another thing that I really enjoy to do, to discover, it's temple. So the grandson temple arrived really with his grandfather. So the travel of Franklin was to leave Canada. It's where he bought these fur coats. Just before leaving, he traveled with a boat from Canada to the United Kingdom, where he met the grandson temple, and he traveled from London to Calais, where he arrived. And the teenage grandson is at the beginning is on his way to adulthood. He starts to be playing like his grandfather, you know, hair in the wind, wearing natural fibers, softer color palette, and gradually, sort of back and forth between his fresh face, American boy style, and he wants to dress up like the Parisian youth his age, you know, in embroidered silk suit, wigs, makeup. So the story basically say, in France, you're not a real man if you're not poured, curled, accessorized, which is exactly the gender fluidity of today. You see what I mean? So the character of Temple was really fun to create because he really had a travel between the 8 episodes.
One of the things when I spoke to the director, Tim Van Patten,
yes.
One of the things that he was very interested in was making this not a typical costume drama that's very grounded in reality. And I think, and so how do you kind of match that kind of period sensibility with that also kind of grounded in reality sort of aesthetic that he was going for?
Well, I think my way to doing that in my work, since many years, it's the way I put so much color in the costumes. On the aging, it's not so dark. Franklin in many scenes is really with these deep orange colors or deep gray, beautiful with his eyes. And Madame Brion, she had incredibly nice color. It's with colors that I could bring a freshness on, not like a period movie with too much aging, and suddenly you just don't understand why everything's so destroyed, so sad. Especially this series, all the story happened between very rich people. And very rich people today, they have new clothes they buy the month before. It was the same at the 19th century. So it's the way I push this sort of freshness, I think, that goes through the series.
What is the collaboration with the actors? You know, Michael Douglas is not his first rodeo on a series like this, but it's also, you know, he's also an executive producer, and I'm told that he was very involved in everything.
Well, no, he was probably extremely involved in the script, on the work with Tim before I arrived on the show. Then my work was to present him my research on his character. We have many information, the way Franklin order very special homespun fabric things he traveled with. We also we still have invoices of a tailor in Paris where the character of Benjamin Franklin goes to order suit, this suit with no details, in a very Quaker style, very Puritan, with absolutely no lace, no metal button stuff. We have all this detail on the character. So I explained to Michael all the things that I discovered through the research. Many research come from the LACMA Museum in Los Angeles. Many research come from the National Portrait Museum you have in Washington. There's many small objects coming back from the travel. Franklin, he come back from France with many little souvenirs, leather details. There's also a costume that Franklin ordered to make a wax figure of himself to send to Washington to tell what's happened to him with the King XVI. And this wax statue was never made. So the family of the tailor who make the suit in Paris for Benjamin Franklin then offer to Washington. So in the United States, there's one suit made in Paris for Franklin. So I tell all this story, all this detail that we have on. We know exactly how Madame Bériot bring Franklin to meet Duplessis, who's the official painter of the royal family, to make first a pastel. And we know that then Franklin was very busy. He left the workshop. Then a few weeks after, from the pastel, Duplessis make a first painting in gray of the drawing of the pastel. Then a few weeks later, he make again the drawing with the orange coat with the fox fur. We know that exactly. There's note of everything. So I tell all this story to Michael. On it, how we make all the suits of Franklin, because we copy the paintings and we have the story. We copy the paintings that were made of Franklin during his 8 years in Paris, not the year before. So with all these details, I present him that, and then up, it was okay for what then he just asked me, take care of me. I'm not so young. I want some very light costumes. So everything inside the costume is extremely light. I use some very thin linen, etc. So it looks heavy, but it's light. All the fur is fake, and I make everything for him to have the day super comfortable. But for Michael Douglas, it's his first 18th century period movie in costumes. So he discovered the costumes like someone who never wore. At the beginning, he say, "Oh, so much material, incredible." And then he enjoy it because he understands how, for example, the volume of the shirt just protect him when he was inside the jacket. He discovered this way of apron, absolutely typical of the 18th century, that we have in many paintings of people working in imprimery, doing the newspaper, etc., printing the things. And he copied it, and I show him the documentation we had, and it's the way we work together. But my way to work is to explain, and the actors enjoy to know more about the character, about what he were, and then they're happy to wear it in front of the camera.
You know what's interesting is all of this, all of the detail that you're giving about this period. I'm curious, just from your experience, is it more difficult to come up with something original, or is it a bigger challenge to work from historical details like that?
Alors, for me, it's the same work, right? It's totally different, but no, vraiment, I do some totally things totally fake, a lot of imagination, like sci-fi movie. And it's another work with many documentation and many drawings. Or we talk with drawings. With this show, we work with documentation and reference from big library online that we find all the details. So it's I don't have a favorite subject. I mean, what I love is to do a very long preparation of going deep in the story, because I know when the show starts, when it's green lighted, I need to have many arguments to talk to everyone and to enrich even my team, even the people who are cutting the costume, even the people who are trying to find the fabric, the laces. We never had the possibility to have the real time for embroideries, the real money to do as a real costume. So I want to give a feeling of how I reread the period to my team, and then we find the things that make things that it looks similar, but it's not similar. You can imagine, because it's from today, and we work with a sewing machine with electricity, that the results gives an idea of the 18th century that I try to reread. But when I do a sci-fi movie, it's imagination, and with the force of the drawings, you could tell a lot. And you could explain a lot, and you could have meeting with showrunner, with the director, to know if we go in the same direction, if we tell the same story before building the costumes. Well, but it's true that more it's invented, more the actors shut up doing the fitting. So it's easier for me. Because when you do something too contemporary, people have a real feeling of what's the clothes of today. And then they start to talk about the feeling of a shirt, feeling of material, feeling of a hairdresser or whatever. So more it's ancient, the more it's invented, easiest is easy to do every morning in the dressing room when you send the actors on set.
Well, Olivier, congratulations. It's such stunning work, and it's very, very. It's like history coming to life right in front of you. Everybody, go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the upcoming award season, and stay tuned for more interviews in the coming weeks. Olivier Bériot, congratulations! A great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this talk with you.